Hi everyone, and welcome back to Reading Narratives with me. So this week we're going to be reading a new narrative, and this narrative is one you might have definitely read before. But before I show you the narrative we're going to read for this week, I want you to remember what that word narrative means. Does anyone remember? Have a think about it. Yes, so a narrative just means we're reading a story. And remember, when we read a story or a narrative, remember there are three main parts we're looking for. So remember, the first part is the orientation. And remember, the orientation tells us who the characters are in the story, where they are, and what they're doing. So looking for the orientation at the beginning of the story. Then the next part of the story is the complication. Now, the complication is the part of the story where there is a problem. Sometimes there's one problem, sometimes there's two problems, sometimes there might even be three problems, but the problem is a big problem. And the only way we can end the story is with the last part, which is the resolution. So there are three parts that make up a story. So it's orientation, complication, and resolution. And the resolution is the part where the problem gets solved. So everyone in the story either has an ending, all the characters are either happy or there's like an ending to the problem, and that is the end of the story. So remembering that we're looking for those three parts when we read our story today. And I know the teachers have some activities you're going to be doing based on this story, so you need to be listening really carefully. So the story we're reading today, are you excited? I'm excited because I know I say this all the time, but I just love reading so much. But this one is a really popular one. Are you ready? We're reading Little Red Riding Hood. So I need you guys to be listening super carefully while I read the book. Little Red Riding Hood. I can already see some of the orientation things right here. I can see a character and I can see the setting. Now the setting just means where they are. So at the moment it looks like she's in the forest or the woods because there's lots of trees and lots of flowers. Let's read and see, shall we? Little Red Riding Hood. Little Red Riding Hood. Once upon a time, there lived a little girl who always wore a bright red cape with a hood. She was known as Little Red Riding Hood. She lived with her mother in a cottage near the woods, and on the other side of the woods lived her grandmother. I can see the woods here, I can see the mum, and I can see Little Red Riding Hood. One day, Little Red Riding Hood's mother said, "Grandma is not feeling well, so I have baked her some bread for you to take to her. Just remember, be careful and stay safe on the path. You know you must never go in the woods." Little Red Riding Hood set off happily, and at first she was really careful, but soon she noticed some lovely flowers that were growing nearby, and she stepped from the path to pick them for her grandmother. She gathered more and more flowers, and before she knew it, she had wandered deep into the woods. She could not see the path at all anymore. Just then, a wolf stepped out from behind the tree. "Good day, my dear," he said, "and where are you going?" "I'm going to visit my sick grandmother on the other side of the woods," replied Little Red Riding Hood. "I stopped to pick some flowers, but now I'm lost." How do you think Little Red Riding Hood feels? She looks a little bit scared. I would be scared if I saw a wolf. Let's keep reading and see. So we've already got to the complication. She's lost in the woods. Let's keep reading and see what else happens. "Let me show you the way," said the wolf. "Oh, thank you," said Little Red Riding Hood as she followed the wolf back on path. But the wolf had a wicked plan. While Little Red Riding Hood walked along the path, he ran through the woods as quick as possible so he could get to grandmother first. Ooh, let's keep reading. I wonder why he wants to get to grandmother first. The wolf knocked on the door. "Who's there?" said grandmother. "It's me, Little Red Riding Hood," answered the wolf in a little voice like Little Red Riding Hood. "I've come to visit you," said the wolf. "Oh, how sweet of you," said Grandma. "Please come in, my dear." Oh, do you think grandmother will know? Of course grandmother's going to know it's not Little Red Riding Hood. Look at it. Look at the wolf. Let's keep reading and see. The wolf opened the door and pounced. He grabbed Grandmother and locked her up in the closet. At that moment, he heard Little Red Riding Hood outside, wrapping a scarf around her head. He jumped into bed and pulled the covers right up to his whiskers. Little Red Riding Hood knocked on the door. "Grandma," she called. "It's me, Little Red Riding Hood. I've come to visit you." Little Red Riding Hood opened the door and stepped inside. "Hello, my dear," said the wolf. "Come, sit on my bed." Surely Little Red Riding Hood can see that's not Grandmother. I'm scared. I want to see what's happening. Let's keep reading. But as Little Red Riding Hood came closer, she began to stare. "Oh, Grandma," she said, "what big ears you have." "All the better to hear you with, my dear," said the wolf. And then she said, "Oh, Grandma, what big eyes you have." "All the better to see you with, my dear." Then Little Red Riding Hood looked even more closely. "Oh, Grandma, but what big teeth you have." "All the better to eat you with," said the wolf, and he leaped over the bed and jumped onto Little Red Riding Hood. "Help! Help!" Little Red Riding Hood said as she ran out of the cottage with the wolf close behind her. A woodcutter heard her cries and ran towards the cottage. "Please save the day, woodcutter, please save the day." The wolf stopped, looked at the woodcutter, and then fled into the woods. He was scared. Together, Little Red Riding Hood and the woodcutter found Grandmother set her free. Thank goodness for the woodcutter. He saved the day, didn't he? He helped Little Red Riding Hood and he set little Grandma free. From that day on, Grandmother was much more careful about who she invited in her home. And you can be sure that Little Red Riding Hood always stayed on the path. And you can see the wolf really sad there because he got scared from the wood chopper. So thank you for reading with me today. I hope you liked that story. And remember that when you're reading any story, it's really important to pay attention to those three parts. So let's just go over some of the things that happened in that story. So firstly, the beginning of the story, there was a couple of characters. So there was Little Red Riding Hood, there was Grandmother, there was the mother and the wolf. So there was 4 characters at the beginning. Then Little Red Riding Hood went into the woods to go to visit her grandmother, but this is where the complication happened. She got lost. She went off the path. She got lost and she bumped into the wolf. So there's one problem. She got lost. 2, she bumped into the wolf. And then the last problem was the wolf went into Grandmother's house and took her spot in the bed ready to eat Little Red Riding Hood. So there was 3 problems in the story. Who can remember what happened at the end of the story where all of the characters end up happy in the end except for the wolf? At the end of the story, let me think. I'll give you thinking time. I remember. The woodchopper saved the day. The woodchopper came in, heard Little Red Riding Hood's cries and scared the wolf away and got Grandma out of the closet. And then in the end, everyone was happy except the wolf. But thank you again for reading. And remember, really try to listen carefully to the story. Listen carefully to me reading. And then you will answer some questions about the story. Thank you. Have a good day, guys.